again, I don't have specific memories of when you were very small of how Dad's treatment of you, Matt, but I think that you somehow were our scapegoat after Ashleigh was scapegoated in a way. But it was like for him, you were like the extra child that just, he didn't have the energy and the patience. Not that Dad was ever patient, but you know what I mean, to invest in you, and I think Mom and I developed, a special kind of love and affection for you because we saw how Dad treated you.
The World Tomorrow. The Worldwide Church of God presents Herbert W. Armstrong.
And I'm here to bring you the truth, because you don't hear this from any other voice. No one else is telling you the things that God is telling you through me. He's speaking through me.
We must not judge what God is most surely doing. Right now, there are no coincidences. Everything has a meaning and is an opportunity to learn to be faithful by being obedient, even when it's uncomfortable.
Those of you that have not surrendered to God to really be obedient to Him, you don't agree very far with me, do you? Of course you don't. You can't. You're carnal-minded, and the carnal mind is enmity against God. The carnal mind is hostile toward God.
The Lord let me experience what it is to be a new bride. I'm not worried about what I'm about to say, though it may be graphic. We're coming to the Lord, and if you can take it, beyond the veil is the chamber. That's the wedding chamber. The Lord told me that.
There was no method for, speaking up or breaking in when Dad was delivering harsh words or harsh discipline, punishment for any of us. I don't remember a single time. So in my recollection, Mom and I were there to pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
Again, my memories of early childhood are so fuzzy, but Dad was a strict parent. So you just have that already. And then, being that we all had different roles and there were different expectations on each of us, because I think some of us offered Dad more than others. There were qualities in some of us that he could exploit a little easier.
Yeah.
And that were more useful. And I just generally recall Matt being in trouble. It was everything that he did. Little things that little boys do. And the expectation in the church that we grew up in is that you rule your household with an iron fist. And, there was a lot of spankings and groundings. I think the groundings were a bit later when we maybe were not spanked as much. But somewhere along the line, I know that Mom and we acknowledged to each other that Matt was like the apple of our eye. Like, if anyone messed with Matt, and when Dad would be harsh with him, it was just crushing to us both. And that was one of those things where Mom and I could communicate without words, in the aftermath of something that would happen. And I hope that you felt this, but I know that I tried and I was compelled to give you extra love in a number of ways and support. And obviously, it wouldn't be right for me to tell the story of the church and my part in everything without acknowledging that I at times held some sort of not official, but like pseudo leadership role in the church. And so I had conversations with people where I was very harsh. And I regret so much of that time in my life. And I've had individual conversations with some of those people that I hurt. And so, yes, I definitely was the one sometimes to have a difficult conversation with you about something that I believed at the time was backing Dad up and that needed to be said or done. But generally, I remember just a feeling of protectiveness and softness towards you, because Mom and I said to each other, we are trying to counterbalance what's happening here. Because there was a certain point where it was so obvious that Matt couldn't do anything right. And children are just so impressionable and they want to make their daddies proud. And Dad had such a sharp tongue.
That definitely was, I mean, you can't sum up a childhood in a term, but that feeling, feeling like anything that you did was not right or up to snuff or whatever it is, that definitely went through my whole like childhood and into my 20s, even probably up to when we left to a certain degree. But that was, I mean, we've laughed about it, but there was I don't know how old I was, but where something bad happened at the house, something was broken. And I said, look what happened that I didn't do, which is like a funny thing to be like, haha. But then you think about like, why would a little kid feel like he needs to point out, like, look at this thing, a bad thing happened, this broke and I didn't do it. Like, I know I didn't. So like, I'm not going to get in trouble, because it was always well, whatever happened, like, well, Matt must have done something, must have broken this or that, or, wasn't meeting expectation in this way or that one. So that was definitely a big part of my childhood and into teens, hardcore, where I just felt like, and I think I always equated it to a little bit how Dad, and I don't know what was in his head, but how Dad probably viewed you, to where it's like you and I were the like screw ups waiting to happen, almost like there was going to be something that we did that we were going to get in trouble for. Mm-hmm. And then this is no fault of their own, but like there was Michael and Sarah, and then you and I were like, okay, these are the black sheep, gonna mess up. They're going to do something stupid. And then Michael and Sarah, very steady, holding the standard, hardcore. Like it was very different, but I didn't feel that with them. You know what I mean? Like I didn't ever feel like it was you and I versus them. When we were together, it was not at all that way. But I did feel like that was, looking back at it now, purposeful on Dad's part to kind of pit the two against each other. Like they're doing what I want them to do. At least that's what it looked like from my perspective anyway. And then I don't know how they felt. Maybe they felt differently. But where like you and I were, at least I was always trying to live up to Dad's view of Michael almost in that way. But I didn't feel that way towards Michael, I don't know if that makes sense, but like Michael and I didn't have that kind of like rivalry relationship at all. But I felt it in terms of how Dad viewed the two of us boys, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And that is, no, Michael would never play into it.
No.
I think he saw that. No, I think he saw that early on and felt that. Michael's pretty intuitive, I think, and had some things figured out.
Michael wanted a little brother and like loved me and still does, like loved me to death. So it's like there was never any of that like rivalry thing. Like we're 5 years apart. Like I just always remember all of y'all, but like Michael in particular was always so sweet and gentle with me as a older brother. Like think about that. Like Michael's 10 and I'm 5. It would be easy to get frustrated, but I don't remember that.
No.
I don't have bad memories of Michael with me like that at all.
I don't have
you know?
one bad memory of Michael.
Yeah.
No. Or you, for that matter.
Well, there's something, I think differences in personality played a big role here because Michael and Sarah both follow rules, and they, as do you, Ash, and
Enneagram 1.
that's right. Shout out. And I feel like they were able to kind of read the writing on the wall and know that it was not going to go well for them if they broke these rules. You know, I recall Michael saying, you know, when I saw how Dad treated so-and-so this way in this situation, I knew then I'll never do that. I will never do anything to make him act like this. And somehow, and Sarah similarly, just, I feel like both of them have like an iron will. And in many ways, they're disciplined people.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I are a little more loosey-goosey and a little more, we're going to push the limits a little bit and push the envelope. And so it was more difficult for us to live in this very rigid structure where we were supposed to fit into a mold and be a certain way and look a certain way and do certain things. And so we got in trouble, and that was just, you were not being a good little soldier. And, you know, when I think about these things in our childhood and our lives and Dad, I mean, I just feel like I have to say that we also have good memories of Dad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have good things that we could say about
Mhm.
Dad. It's a complicated thing in my mind because we did have so much love for him and we felt that he loved us, and we have fun memories of Dad and really fond memories and things that he said that was funny, and, you know, experiences we shared with him that just have positive feelings attached to them. But it's taken time, and for me, educating myself on what these structures actually are and what they're intended to accomplish. And it's powerful when you name them. This was not discipline. This was abuse. This was manipulation. This was coercive control. And so much of that, for me, like the light bulb came on when I had children and when I had my daughter, and the thought of striking her repeatedly because she's 18 months old and, you know, she threw herself down on the floor in a store, or, you know, and cried, or something didn't go the way she wanted and she is literally unable to regulate her emotions. Her little brain is underdeveloped, you know, she's a baby, you know, or 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. It came to me slowly, I would say, because that's a lifetime for me of conditioning and being taught how things should go and how you should train up a child and raise them and discipline them, what you should demand from them, to then transitioning into, you know, honoring that she's her own person and really wanting her personality to develop in a very natural way in a safe environment. And I look back on our lives and when we were little kids, and I have compassion for each one of us, surviving at times in an environment where that was simply not allowed.
No.
And for you, definitely, Matt, just the experience of having constant eyes on you, ready to pounce when any mistake was made, was just, puts kids in such a stressed out state. And, sometimes I wonder what kind of people we would be. I'm proud of who we are now, but I wonder, what would have been different, because you have accomplished a lot in your life, and you have, discipline, and you're smart, and you've taught yourself many things. And I don't know if that resourcefulness would be there to that degree if not for this upbringing. So I suppose we could find silver lining in some of these things, but generally it's sad because we were just little kids and it was so wrong. And if you read any books on the development of children's brains and how
and what we knew of love was taught to us. So if we felt love, it was, or we perceived something as love as a child, we're not understanding what conditional love is. We don't understand that isn't actually what love is. So to us, maybe we did feel loved at times. And like you said, it's confusing because now after you're out of it and you're an adult and you have your own children, you know what love is.
Yeah.
And you're experiencing that with your own children. And then you see that in stark contrast to what we experienced, which was completely conditional. It was conditional upon our behavior and our reflection on him, and our value to him was not just an us being at all.
No way.
I know this will resonate with you, Ashleigh. We've talked about it a little bit, but just with the way that I remember my raising, it's kind of like you mentioned, it's kind of a two-edged sword. It's like, well, I wouldn't be in the field of work that I'm in if not for that. But I was telling somebody else at work this story where it's kind of like I see it two ways. Where it's like, well, I really love what I do. I never was interested in it before. It was kind of just like thrown on me. It's like, here, figure this out, is how I remember that. I don't know if you remember that time, but it was just, I'll just recap it real quick. I'm not going to get in depth, but Dad wanted to record our sermons at the church. I think he bought some software and a camera, and he had kind of tried, but just wasn't really getting anywhere. I was 14 or 15 in that range.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize you were that young.
I think I hope I'm remembering that part right. Nobody fact checked me on it, but something around that era. And I was technically inclined, generally speaking. So I remember he got frustrated with it, and he was like, here, why don't you try to figure this out? Because he wanted to record and upload stuff to YouTube, And so that's kind of how that started. I never had an interest in cinema. I wasn't a crazy movie person or I want to be a director or any of that stuff. So that's kind of how that happened. So I'm grateful that I'm in that line of work because I did find a love for it, and it's what I do for a living, and been doing it for a living for many years now. So, and that's wonderful. But I was telling somebody at work this story, and I said, I'm glad that I do it. I wish I would have had the choice. I wish I could have chosen it.
Right.
I wish I could have found out that I liked it almost without it kind of being forced on with expectation. And then the part that I was going to say, I know will resonate with you. The perfection part, perfection means you can avoid pain.
Right.
And then that goes throughout the rest of your life. I'm not still in the position to where if I don't make something perfect that I'm going to have Dad come down on me for it. But I still, that's it. People I work with, at work now, they know that about me. I'm going to go over this thing. I'll have 30 drafts of a video because I'll watch it over and over and I'm going to tweak this. And then they'll watch it and be like, I can't tell the difference between the first one and this one, but I can. and I like have to pour over it over and over.
The neural pathways were laid.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do?
You
I
just-
find myself doing that as well.
You learn that, you know, making it as perfect, close to perfect as you can
Mm-hmm.
is the best way to avoid that pain. So then that's the number one thing for you is anything you're doing, like make it so that it's doesn't become a problem for you.
What about fear of mistakes? Because I had that. It was just debilitating at times where I'm deliberating on something because I just don't want to make a mistake. And I'm curious if that's also part of it.
I had it. I don't know if it would be the mistake part. I would have the like paralyzation thing to not start something that I wanted to do because I was afraid that it wouldn't be perfect immediately.
Yeah.
And so I just wouldn't.
That resonates.
And like I had to really like work to break free from that, even with like recording like my own music just for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had to like make an effort to say like, this isn't for everybody else. Like this is for me, like doing things for myself and not like this is for someone else and they're going to pour over it and they're going to let me know that they don't view it as perfect. It's like, that's not the point, but it just like puts you in a state of paralysis where you're like, well, I can't do it because I'm not confident that I'm going to 100% nail it. So then you just don't do anything. So I've had to really like work to break free from that. But I know that was pervasive in my childhood development of just, you know, like you said, I think like eyes always on you.
Yeah. And I don't think it was effort that was praised. It was performance.
Yes. Yeah.
It was good performance, you know, and not to veer off track, but just like even in sports, because that was, you know, a reflection upon him. If you're good at sports or music or whatever else that was of value, I knew that I needed to play well, whether it was tennis or basketball, or I needed to play piano well. And there are multiple instances throughout childhood that I can remember where I had an off day, or, you know, I was giving special music at church and I didn't read music. This was all in my head, and I got distracted and I forgot where I was. And just the absolute like embarrassment that he had of me really sticks out to me now as a mother, because I've been in multiple situations with my children at school performances or in sports, a track meet. I mean, my number one concern is them and how they're feeling. Like, they can come in dead last. That is not a reflection on me. Like, who cares? You know, if that happened, my concern would be for them. Like, I hope they don't feel bad about themselves because they gave their full effort. And that would be my focus, which I think you would definitely agree with, Jen. That's what you're there as your child's cheerleader and support.
Yes, and you would be thinking about how they might be feeling about how they performed, and if they were having an off day, and if that's going to affect them emotionally, and what you can do to support, and what you should say, and how you comfort them, and on and on.
You want to be that like safe place, like come to me, this is where you're safe. But it was never like that. I mean, and I've told you guys this, I won, quite a few tennis matches in high school, which I think was a point of pride for Dad. I lost some too, and he was at a meet and I was having an off day. And this is someone that I had played previously and I had won that match. So I think the expectation was that I was going to win again, but she was playing well and I was not playing great that day, and Dad was there watching. And I remember looking at him in the bleachers, and he was really frustrated with me. There was a very, not a very far distance between where I was and where he was sitting. And he was like shaking his head. And I just remember thinking, like, I'm letting him down. Like, he's upset because I'm losing, and I was losing pretty bad. And he got up and left, like shaking his head, like, well, it's not worth me being here. When I think, a healthy parent, it's like, that's when it matters the most. It's not, I didn't go out there wanting to lose my match. I was also upset that I was not playing well, but then to also have that added shame, like, I don't know what's wrong with you today. I'm out of here. This isn't worth my time. It's like, it really sends a strong message. And I remember that time specifically because it was a pivotal moment in my life. It was a moment that I just realized, like, oh my God, like I have to do well to get love. That's what this is. And I felt angry. When I think back on my childhood, that was a time where I can just really vividly recall that anger, which was probably the culmination of years of feeling like I've got to perform well in order to receive praise or love. And it's just like a game you're playing that you never wanted to play, but you don't realize other kids aren't doing that. Like in healthy families, because you don't know the difference.
Right. I think I escaped some of that because I didn't have anything of value.
I'm just remembering our joke, like, my daughter Sarah, she's singing, and then here's Matthew, he's playing guitar, and there's Jen. And then I just move on.
Michael, my preaching son, and then Jen as well.
Yeah, Jen's out there.
Jen is right there.
Did he say that?
Something to that effect. He was like, I don't remember what the context was, but he was like introducing some of the family as we were like sitting out in the pews, and it was like describing to people like, yeah, Matthew, my son, he was the one up here playing guitar, and then Sarah, and then there's Jen and her husband Brian, and then just moved on. Like there's nothing to
Your
say.
accomplishment was marrying Brian, which I would say is
That's
pretty
right.
good accomplishment. He's a great man.
That's right.
So.
Yeah, I think that it's funny now, not funny, but it's looking at all of you and your talents and whatnot. I mean, Dad was able to use those in different ways and put pressure on you, and
maybe you were just smarter than the rest of us.
You have these hidden. I don't know how to do anything.
Yeah, you have these hidden talents that are going to just start coming out now that you're out.
Maybe so. Look out. Yeah, it was. I just felt like I flew under the radar a little bit in that regard. Dad still, I was in trouble a lot. Lots of spankings, lots of groundings, but I don't have that internal pressure that you guys describe. I don't know about Michael, but the other three of you definitely have this need for things to be perfect, and I just don't. I like to do good work, and I like for things to look nice and be nice and, whatever I'm putting my hand to, but I am also okay if it's not.
Well, that was hammered too, at least when I was younger, that whatever you do it with all your heart and all your might, or else, like, why bother? And so that has been something that I've had to learn is, like, sometimes good enough is okay.
I still don't like that.
Oh, I know. I mean, I'm in graduate school now, and my husband is like, so he's like trying to gently say, like, are you gonna do school where, like you don't maybe spend all your time on it, but you do what you need to do to pass your classes. Like, that was his nice way of being like, you're not gonna like drive yourself crazy over making sure that you do everything like to the highest level that you can. And I was like, I don't know how to do that, but I am going to try. I really am going to try to do good enough.
Best of luck to you.
But I think it's like we have to learn. We have to practice it. I don't know. You don't look willing.
Put something bad out into
You're
the
still
world.
looking at me like,
No.
yeah, I pass on that.
You said something earlier about like the only way to get love was to perform well, and
Yeah.
then you said praise. Do you guys felt like you got praise?
Yes, I did.
You did? Okay.
I did.
Do you?
Was there wasn't much to praise because I didn't have, I think maybe he liked that I did well in school.
Do you remember hearing about it? I just wonder if that's a change that occurred or if it was just kid by kid basis, because I don't.
Oh, it was definitely kid by kid.
Because I don't remember, like, I'm sure there were times, but I don't remember, like, getting praise for things, at least directly. I would hear about it via other people. Like, yeah, Dad said such and such.
Dad did have trouble giving you compliments.
Yeah.
For sure.
But I just remember generally, like, I wanted to do well enough to, like, not get in trouble and or, like, for it not to be noticed. Like, just do what you're supposed to do well enough that you can just kind of, like, blend in. That's kind of how I remember it being. So I don't know. And again, I'm sure there had to have been moments where there was some kind of praise given, but I can't recall one. But
I don't want to jump too far ahead or like mess up a future story, but there's something about Dad's interactions with you that were so transactional at a certain point, and it was glaringly obvious. You may tell the full story and the background of this later, but I'd recall a time that you were with me and you had an anxiety episode while playing music at a church service, and you left the stage, basically the stage space, and I got with you quickly, and you were with me in my cabin. We were out of town, and we were talking, and I was just trying to help, and your phone rang, and it was Dad. And I remember you giving short answers, and then you hung up the phone, and you said, "He doesn't care about me," or something to that effect, because what he said when he called you was, "Am I going to be able to count on you?
Oh,
Am I going to be able to count on you? Because I can't have you on the stage and not know whether you're going to stick around or not." And you were in an extremely depressive state, and he knew that, and it frustrated him.
mm-hmm.
And I know you and I had that moment, and I could not argue with you because that was your parent. And the purpose of the phone call was to ascertain whether or not you were going to be this moving part in something that he needed to work well, and didn't ask you anything about the state that you were in and how you were feeling and if you were okay or what he could do. And that was a moment for me too, because it was like added onto the pile of things that I'm noticing about specifically how Dad treats you. Just
zero empathy.
the opposite of it, even. Like, and that's what I mean. When Mom and I we knew, we had to be the ones to treat Matthew as some humanity because those types of things were happening. And you knew enough and had the wherewithal to see that and hear that and know that something was very wrong with that. But again, nothing could be done. There was no fix for that.
See, that's another one of those moments that I could never forget, but I wouldn't be able to recall it unless you brought it up again. So I know there's so much, there has to be like an amazing amount of like compartmentalization in my brain as far as my emotion and memories of childhood. And I was in my 20s, I'm guessing, when that was like mid 20s, probably something like that, early to mid 20s.
Before you were married.
Yeah. Yeah, but I of course couldn't forget that, but I wouldn't remember it unless you brought it up. But yeah, that's probably a little bit of I don't know if extreme's the right word, but like a really good example. But that kind of thing was not abnormal, as you are aware, like with Dad. I just, like, Sandy and I have joked about it, but I remember there was one particular Sabbath to where there were some issues with Dad's lapel mic or headset mic or whatever it was. And like, we're doing our best. Like, a lot of the equipment that we're using, like we've bought, like we've put a lot of our own money, like it's our camera and lenses and all kinds, like there's no telling like how much that I spent, and Sandy too. And like after Liz and I got married, like how much we put into, the production of the church. And in part, not just because we wanted it to be good, but because we didn't want it to be a problem. Like there was an expectation.
You were anticipating.
Yeah, there was an expectation for what it needed to look and sound like. And I remember we had this more than once. I don't know why. But there was an issue with Dad's like lav mic, and it would cut in and out sometimes, and that was a real problem for him. And he like sent me a text, and I probably still have it somewhere, where he just like, this was like on a Saturday after service. It's like 7:00 at night on a Saturday. And just like tore into me about the mic. And of course, like the whole message was about how like, this is your ministry. And, it wasn't just like, hey, we need to get this issue sorted with the mic. It was, you're failing God essentially by not doing your ministry up to par. And you need to get this sorted. Like it's a, dishonoring kind of thing. Like, but that was not abnormal. Like I wasn't looking for praise. I didn't want that. Like if somebody asked me, like, what are you looking for? It's like, I don't want to get that message.
Right. I agree. I don't think it was for me either looking for praise.
Yeah.
Because I did get it. There wasn't, I wouldn't say it was a lot, but I feel like I knew when he was proud.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I've overheard him say things to other people, maybe in passing, or he said things to me. But I think I agree with you that it was less about praise, because I still don't even now feel like that's something that I need from people. I just didn't want the negative consequences that would come with not doing well, which I think is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I remember you saying to me, I don't know if you exactly said this, but it was basically, I want to be invisible.
Yes.
I want to just be the guy that comes in and does the work, and it's up to par, and I don't need you to pat me on the back, but certainly you didn't want to be lambasted.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you go to a play like the one that we went to recently, Now I'm noticing things because I'm in the audio video world.
Right.
But for most people, like they don't talk about that unless something was either extraordinarily good, like, oh man, the sound was outrageous, or something happened that made you think about like, oh, there was a problem. I couldn't hear him, something like that. So that was my point of view. Like, I just want it to be to the level to where it's not even like talked about or thought about, just kind of like blend in. Like, I don't want people to talk about how amazing. Don't talk about it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also recall Dad's response when I talked to him about the fact that you were struggling so seriously with anxiety that went hand in hand with depression. And he appeared annoyed and said, well, he knows what to do.
Which is what?
You act as if.
Oh my gosh.
You act as if you don't have it. And I feel confused even now about how I could experience that extreme lack of empathy when your child is very visibly suffering.
He acted as if he didn't have me. don't include that.
No, it's staying.
Now I know. Now I know how he did it. You just act.
And eventually, it's just second nature.
Wow. Imagine if that worked. You would not need.
Well, that's the way that he said he
health
conquered depression.
Yeah, it worked for him.
He knows what to do. And I was annoyed by that response. And I gave him some pushback on that, I remember. But that's what I mean when I say it's glaringly obvious. Like, how do you just not feel?
Yeah.
And it's almost as if, this thing that you're going through is pretty inconvenient for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to need you to operate at 100% at all times. And your personal issues should not impact your work and should never affect me, is how it felt. And I think maybe prior to having children, I just didn't put it all together how incredibly bizarre that is. That is not a normal experience of a parent, period.
No.
I don't have access to feelings like that. And it was, you were saying, I stepped on you, but all roads lead back to him.
Always.
And I think sometimes narcissists know how to appear as if they have empathy. I feel like I've experienced that with him.
Same.
And I still do. I have moments that I question in the past where I think, it sure seemed like he was there for me, or that he cared. But I also think when something would happen, an event or something difficult that wasn't about him or wouldn't necessarily impact him, he would use it as currency to share. He liked to talk, and he would share your personal information and your personal information with other people. And that happened all the time. And someone can fight me on that because I heard it. I was on the receiving end of information about other people that came out in private counseling sessions.
I experienced that too, where I thought I was feeling love from him. And looking back on it, though, I think there was a self-serving aspect to that or angle to that. And, probably during the times where you felt that, you were one of his biggest supplies, right? And so, of course, he wants things to stay good with you. But, it stands out to me that when you were a child, you were not feeling love from him. He was not there for you then, or trying to comfort you or understand, like you said yesterday, something about you were difficult. I mean, I would challenge that, because what we're talking about is just like a strong spirited child,
Mm-hmm.
And that was not something that he really wanted to deal with. And so it wasn't like he had this motivation to try to connect with you or understand. If he, any of the times you were acting out, it was likely because you wanted attention, because you were lacking it. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't recall him making it a point to try to understand, okay, what's going on here.
No,
It
it
was
was about
easier.
the
Yeah.
behavior modification
Absolutely.
solely.
So later on, when you've become a more important person in his life, that's supplying, giving him that narcissistic supply, then to me, it seems obvious. Yeah, he had motivation to appear to be there for you in certain times.
Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, I hate to like speak for him, but just knowing what we know about narcissism, it just all fits like a puzzle.
And nobody is one thing,
That's right.
But I think that's the thing to understand about the personality type we're talking about. Like, it's so, I don't even know how to put it. Like, it feels like it's in every single area of their life and how they interact with everybody. So there may have been moments that, weren't directly linked to narcissism, but it's hard to not assume, like you're saying, like you don't want to paint with a broad brush, but
Right.
like for our whole lives, you pretty much could, like, just sorry, not sorry kind of thing. Where it's like, it's just how it was. So again,
Well,
nobody's one thing, but
yeah, we're not diagnosing him at all, but I think we're all on the same page that we're dealing with narcissistic abuse. There's no doubt in my mind, not even, I mean, I'm 100% sure that that's what we're dealing with. And, sometimes the narcissist can also lean into sociopathy, and the hallmark of that is just a complete severe lack of empathy. And from what we've learned recently, that appears to develop over time. So maybe that's a sliding scale. And I wonder if there was maybe a little bit more empathy early on, and then this gradually progressed to the point where we are really hard pressed to find any evidence of empathy. There are just too many instances where there was pain inflicted on people, like real mental anguish, psychological abuse, and there was no obvious or apparent sign of empathy, nowhere to be found. In fact, there was almost a sadistic relishing in this whatever you would call it, the problem at hand, or the chaos, just almost like, do you guys know what I'm talking about? Just like excitement about some type of big conflict rather than grief, like everyone else around is feeling. Everyone else is very upset and troubled, but there's just something enjoyable, it seemed like, for him.
I mean, obviously, as you said, we cannot get in his head and speak for him,
Yeah.
but it appeared that way at times,
Yeah.
that there was some attention to be gained,
Yes.
that it was something to discuss, you know. And I also can bear witness that other people, and like Mom, would be just absolutely full of dread and grief and sadness and fear. And Dad would somehow be able to just power through and inflict harm and say things to us that could not be unsaid, that in some cases changed the trajectory of our lives, that had deep impact. And some of the things that I have described to my own therapist, she has called psychological torture.
Absolutely.
And what can you do but just accept the reality of that? Dad kind of had a rub some dirt in it attitude for us. And, like, we should be grateful to him for doing, for him being willing to spend the time with us and do the hard things and not just take the easy route with us kids. And so to just really sift through that and recognize that just because he called it discipline and this is God's way does not mean that that's what was actually happening, because we have terms for things like this now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm uncomfortable even using the term spanking, which I've used in these episodes, because I don't, what is that? No, like, we were literally being beaten and humiliated because a lot of the time our pants were down. We're 10, 12 years old. That's humiliating. So it's not only painful, but it's just very damaging in a lot of ways psychologically.
And not only, I know you mentioned this briefly, but Dad did not like for us to cry out because he
No.
felt that that was us carrying on and giving the appearance as if we were being beaten. And he did not like that because Dad rarely, in my experience, spanked us when he was angry.
You're
He
right.
was very level and calm, and he was doing what he believed to be his duty as a parent to discipline us.
The story I told about my spanking when he was out of control, that was an outlier.
Yes.
Typically it was, I'm going to sit you down and tell you why I have to do this to you.
Absolutely. And so we'd get the little lecture and then the spanking, but he did not want us to loudly cry out or react. And
or if we cried, we had to stop.
Yeah, I remember do-overs. Like if you cried, like you
get another one.
You have to do it over and not cry.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just that squashing of any natural emotion that you would have as a little kid. Like, nope, that's bad. That means more pain.
Mm-hmm.
So don't emote. Don't cry when you feel like you need to cry, because then more bad will happen. So you just...
It is just
ingrained.
Swallow your feelings. Swallow them. And I remember being spanked with other siblings. I don't know if it was you, Jen. I don't think it would have been you, Matt, but you or Sarah. Like, we're both in trouble and we're both in the bedroom, and you have to watch your sibling go through that and not cry, and you're next. Yeah.
And I have learned since that the feelings that we had when we were experiencing those beatings
Yeah.
were being experienced by the other kids in the house who could hear it.
Yes.
And when I learned that, it brought back a rush of memory for me in my body. And I remembered the anxiety that I felt knowing that one of you was back in the bedroom waiting and that he was going to come home any minute.
You're right. I remember those anxiety-filled times as well. Just a pit in my stomach, waiting for this to happen and being glad when it's over for whoever it was.
And I don't know if you mentioned this when you talked about it, but we were not supposed to cry, or certainly not cry out and where anybody else could hear. And then he expected us to hug him.
Yes. Yeah.
Afterwards.
Yeah. That was hard. I do remember feeling like I don't feel like hugging you, but you can't say that.
No.
So everything is a suppression of what you're actually feeling, and it's almost like you have to gaslight yourself that, I'm not upset about this. This was okay. I deserved this.
Yeah.
He loves me. This is a loving thing that just happened because, he wouldn't be doing this if he didn't love me.
If you like this episode of The Cult Next Door, please leave us a positive review and rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And don't forget to subscribe to be notified of new episodes.